Hello, I'm Austin.
I'm George.
And I'm Christian, and you're listening to the Lukewarm
Cinema
Podcast. We're three lifelong friends that like to talk about everything movies and TV.
And we will also give you deep dives and detailed information on some of your favorite shows and movies.
Deep dives and shallow dives, because we're not exactly intellectuals. And we hope to see you guys on iTunes, Spotify, and Stitcher under the Lukewarm Cinema Podcast.
Now then, welcome back to another episode of the Sitcom Archive Deep Dive Overdrive. I'm Eggs Benedict.
And I'm Alison Barton-Simmons.
And together, we're a couple of SADDOs who like to spend our time once a week, sometimes twice a week, diving into past episodes of The Good Life forensically and seeing what it was about it that made us so happy in our childhood and continues to bring a smile to our face when we're watching back now.
Do you find watching it as an adult, obviously you're watching it through different eyes, aren't you, as a grown-up?
Definitely.
Have you found that more, having to sort of do it forensically for the podcast, are you seeing it even differently again, do you think?
It doesn't diminish the enjoyment of it at all, but it just makes you realise how clever the writing is when you do it in such detail. You know, it's so well written.
That too.
I mean, we're going to do other series, but I would say it's possibly the most well written sitcom of that era. You know,
I tend to agree. Yeah, I think where we're up to now as well, we are on Series 2, Episode 6. It's just, for me, it just feels like it's just another step up every week.
Yes, this one's it's quite an emotional one, isn't it? It's called Home Sweet Home, and it's quite pulls at the heartstrings. This one.
There was things that I found when I was rewatching it now as an adult, things that would have gone completely over my head as a kid. Things between the goods, that you sort of you buy into as an adult. I think a bit more deeply.
So with this episode, as with every episode, you can we tweet links to where you can watch the original Good Life episode for free on Daily Motion the day before our new episode drops. So if you follow our link, you'll be able to watch it, or just search for it on Daily Motion. Some of the episodes are on YouTube, or, you know, it's on BritBox, and there's DVDs available. So you can watch the episode and then join us when we pull it apart the following day. That's what we're all about, isn't it? That's our raison d'etre. Before we get into this episode, which is a belter, we're going to have a quick look at some of the interviews Felicity Kendall's given over the years about playing Barbara and the character of Barbara, because Felicity Kendall's a very different person than the sweet, sort of subservient character that she plays on The Good Life, which she's at pains to point out. Not that I think she is that subservient, really. She's quite fierce and stands up for herself, Barbara, but Felicity Kendall has sort of stressed over the years in different interviews that she's a completely different person. I think I mentioned in another podcast that she said she's had tons of affairs whenever she wanted and things like that.
In real life?
Yeah. Well, she left her husband to have an affair with Tom Stoppard, the playwright. And then that fizzled out, and she went back to her husband, but they never remarried, but they've been together a long time, and she's had lots and lots of different relationships, and
right.
You know, not judging her for that, but she's just quite open when she's talking about it. So the first thing I'm just going to read to you is from a paywall article which I used a Google Chrome extension to bypass. I think it was on the Times. She says, "To me, acting is convincing people that you are what you are not. I'm not interested in playing anyone like me. Why would I do that? I do that all day. Of course I love playing Barbara, but she was, up to a point, rather irritating. One of the misconceptions, which I can take as a huge compliment, is that people used to think that was what I was like. So you can see where she's coming from. And then she says, I always did have affairs when I wanted. It's just how you are at the moment. Look, the aura of sweetness and light associated with Barbara Good has got bugger all to do with my life.
Wow, that's so honest, isn't it? Wow.
Yeah, she's great. She's got an autobiography as well, which I'd love to read. And in a separate interview, she says about Barbara, she wasn't a fantasy figure exactly, but she was the one that wasn't entirely real of the cast. The others were sort of people that everybody knew. Barbara had all the ingredients: feisty, strong, but adoring, up for anything, very funny, that people find attractive. And I think that's certainly true.
That is true.
It's not just her looks, is it? It was just her, a sense of fun, Barbara.
Yeah, I think like the old sort of adage of men wanted to be with her and women wanted to be her, and I can see that she was someone that you could look up to and admire and want to be just like her. And I think, I don't know, maybe this is like a bit of a sweeping generalisation, but in the 70s, I don't know, I can't imagine there being many Barbaras.
No, probably not. Certainly not willing to sort of make those sort of decisions about their life on a whim like Barbara did. Yeah. But she goes on to say, it was a good creation that sort of grew and grew. I saw a clip of it the other day, and that is so not me that I think now from a distance, oh, that was really good acting.
Oh, well, it was. It very much was. Yeah.
But then she also draws a parallel to, this was a few years ago, this interview, she draws a parallel to the character of Rachel in Friends.
Okay.
So she says, I do think the appeal to men of characters like Rachel and Barbara is exactly the same. It could be the same character, but then I think in popular culture there has always been a character like that. From those created by Jane Austen to those played by Doris Day and Jennifer Aniston. She looks sweet, but she is perfectly able not to be. She has a sense of humour, and she absolutely loves men, but she isn't going to frighten them either. Which is exactly it, isn't it? She's like a bit of an every woman, isn't she? She's the character. Fun and attainable, but not intimidating, which is obviously what a lot of men find can't handle women who, a little bit. Oh well, no! I've run into I'm digging a hole for myself.
You're in a cul-de-sac now.
Now let's abandon that before I say something I'll get in trouble for. But I thought that was all those quotes that stitched together just showed like she had great insight into that character she played. She's a smart lady.
Yeah, she must have had a real understanding of what it was that she was doing, and perhaps even how important that role was for viewers and for herself as an actress as well. She had a real depth of understanding of it.
This is a good episode for her as well, I think. So
I agree.
Should we get stuck into it?
Yay!
Okay, so we're going to have a look at Series 2, Episode 6, Home Sweet Home.
Good life, good life, good life, good life, good life, good life, good life.
So, this episode begins with the Goods carrying a dead Perky or Pinky? Perky.
It's Perky.
A dead Perky into the kitchen. Tom very noisily making lots of sighs and...
He did a lot of huffing and puffing.
Yeah, that's par for the course.
Yes.
And obviously, as a viewer, you're thinking, well, this seems a bit odd after the fuss in Series 1 about the bloody... the pigs going to the slaughter. So it did seem a bit, they've killed a pig. And then he bangs it on that table, which I'm not sure how hygienic it is to bung a carcass of a pig on a table. But Margot comes in, doesn't she, wearing sort of a Grotbag's wig on her shoulder.
Grotbag's wig, she did.
I'm sure that'll get a mention later in Fashion Corner. And she's totally baffled by the Goods cutthroat attitude to this pig, and I can understand that. But Tom points out, of course, that it's just about practical living. That's what their lifestyle is.
While Margot's busy asking about what's going on, why is there half a animal carcass on your table, Barbara tells her as well that it's Miss Mountcharft. which I thought was a bit dark.
Yeah. It's quite a good gag from Tom here as well, isn't it?
I loved it.
Well, Margot says, why is one half of your pig a sheep? And Tom says, it had a split personality.
I loved the idea that they'd reared these pigs with the intention all along to slaughter them for food, and had done a swap as well and got half a sheep carcass for half of Perky.
It's very enterprising, so fair play to the goods.
Yes.
And Margot then proceeds to make a big song and dance out of some news that she's had, which is basically just that the new neighbours, Mr. and Mrs. Weaver, meet her approval. And the goods are totally underwhelmed at this news because it's really not that much of an interest to them. But we find out really that Margot essentially approves of them because she's visited them. They have a ceramic umbrella stand, a split-level cooker, and no paperbacks.
I know, that's all the ingredients of a great neighbour that's going to fit into the avenue.
Well, as Tom and Barbara sort of wheedle out of her, basically, she's a conservative and she's not northern. So they're on to a winner. And they're teasing her, and Margot says, I could smack your face sometimes, Tom. And I thought, yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah, you can get in the queue.
Although I quite like it when he's teasing Margot, as long as it's not making her uncomfortable with some of the things he does when he's flirting. But
I know.
We get Margot admitting to a snobbery. Effectively, she does own it, doesn't she? She sort of says,
she does.
Yeah, this is me, and she even admits that she finds the goods a blight on the avenue, but announces that she's risen like a phoenix from the fires of the goods' eccentricity, and nothing can shock her about their way of life, which is a bit rich given her reaction to the bloody cadaver in the kitchen.
Exactly, yeah. She has just been a bit upset in the kitchen, and to say that nothing can shock her now, it's a bit of a stretch, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But I do like the fact that Margot owns her the negative sides of her personality. She's just like, this is the way I am, she's confident in herself, which is part of her appeal, I think. Tom takes great pleasure in telling Margot all about the boar stud coming over to give Pinky a good seeing to. Yeah,
the pig pimp.
And obviously Margot is immediately aghast that she will be able to see the goings on in the pig pen from her garden, and then even more aghast when she realises that so will Mrs. Weaver from the other side of the fence.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah,
just Tom double voyeurs of
Tom says,
pig porn.
she could watch if she likes.
They should have started charging. It sounds like they could have done a great trade in pig porn.
I like the way this scene ends as well, because Margot does that thing that she's done in previous episodes, like with the telephone man when she just said "good day" and walks off.
Goodbye.
Yeah, Margot just says "good morning" and leaves, doesn't she? It's like, right, well, I'm not happy, so I might as well go.
I like that. I think I might start doing that myself, actually, when things just don't go as I want. Goodbye.
Well, we know how this episode's ending then, don't we?
Goodbye.
So we see the boar arrive with his handler, and that the boar meets Pinky. We don't see any graphic pig shagging at this point.
No, that would have been too far. But yeah, he's the boar heads into the pen with Pinky. It's Pinky that's left, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
And
Margot's erected a sort of makeshift screen out of a blanket, hasn't she? So she doesn't have to witness it.
But she's behind it in the pagoda, doing some of that magic watering with a magic watering can. And you think if you were going to be that offended, you'd just stay in, wouldn't you, with the curtains shut?
Well, yeah, she's going to hear pigs squealing and stuff. She's not going to like that, is she? She hasn't thought it through.
No.
Unless she just wants to be out there to show her outrage. But the pig handler, Mr. May, was it Mr. May? Yeah. He's clearly a bit of a bumpkin, isn't he? He's a stereotype of sorts, because when the goods take him into the kitchen and give him a drop of the pea pod, he barely blinks, does he? to the good surprise.
After the reactions that we've had in previous weeks, this was one where, it didn't even touch the sides, I don't think.
He even says, like, it could do with a drop more alcohol. Because he's got that sort of Somerset accent, even though he's just outside
in
London.
The world have.
Get off my land! And so, I mean, Tom's basically trying to avail himself of Mr. May's farming expertise in order to learn how to improve his operation, which is commendable.
Yes. Tom just doesn't want to hear it's not really constructive criticism, is it? He's trying to be really helpful, and he's trying to be quite a guiding hand for the goods, with his advice, which Tom, know-it-all Tom, doesn't really want to take.
No, he just wants to show off, doesn't he? And he's a bit put out when Mr. May quite bluntly tells him that they're just playing at it, and it seems like a hobby to him.
It's all very nice, but you're just playing at it, aren't you?
We are not. This is our way of life.
Oh, dear. Seem more like just hobby.
Yeah, the goods don't really want to hear it. The advice about Geraldine being taken up to the land up at the common, but then she's still got to get back, and she needs the food that she's just eaten to get back, and it's all really, really sort of, you could tell it was like just really helpful stuff for someone that wanted to have a self-sustainable lifestyle, but it didn't seem to sort of want to hear it.
No, but he does soften, I suppose. You get, the guy's basically, he lays it out for them. He points out the setup is about self-sufficiency, but it's not actually being efficient. They're wasting resources with everything they're doing and making life harder for themselves. So he sort of says, why don't you just move out to the country and buy some real land, And Tom does swallow his pride, and he sort of takes Mr. May's advice to look at a more sizable small holding of is it 8 acres, Farley's place?
Yes.
Farley's place. Come and have a look at Farley's place.
Oh.
So
they go and have a look.
He's basically saying, if you want to do it, become a farmer. Don't do this shit. It doesn't work. He's singing from Monty Don's hymn sheet, isn't he?
He is. I felt quite sad though, because they look a bit crestfallen that what they think is like the idyllic life that they wanted, and they're doing it. They're in the midst of it, aren't they? But it's just not quite. It's not quite. Not that it's not quite right, but it's just there's ways of doing it better. And I suppose we all know that when someone says that you could do it better, you just feel a bit shit, don't you?
Yeah, you feel like you failed, but they're trying to fail upwards. They're just trying to get better at it.
Exactly.
You learn from your mistakes, don't you? And I think it's quite. I mean, they want to compromise. They want a bit of both, which is ultimately what we see as the episode ends. Because the goods do go and they get a lift from Mr. May, avoiding. They don't ride with a pig stud out back, but they get a lift from him to check out Farley's place. And the next we see, we don't see them checking out this small holding, but we see Mr. May dropping them off at the train station, head back to the city. And they don't actually have any money for the train. So
they've no money. They have to hide. They have to hide at the ticket machine and then walk home.
Yeah. I think they hitchhike as well, don't they? Because back in Surbiton, we see Margot holding court with Mrs. Weaver.
Mrs. Weaver. Who did Mrs. Weaver sound like to you?
Oh, I didn't pick up on any similarity.
Oh, no. I thought she sounded a lot like Maggie Thatcher.
Really? I'll have to go back and check that again.
She had that, that sort of like back of the throat way of talking that Margaret Thatcher was taught to do. I thought she sounded very much like that.
Exactly, that Margaret Thatcher cultivated. It wasn't a natural speaking voice.
It wasn't.
Was it?
It was to sound more sort of to speak with more authority. And I thought that Mrs. Weaver. So I thought that you would instantly not like her.
Yes, Mrs. Ledbetter, but that is East Surbiton, isn't it?
I didn't see enough of her to form an opinion, but I was actually I was quite pleased for Margot to have a kindred spirit that she could,
yeah,
And Jerry's there as well, but he's not listening to the conversation. He just seems to be checking out Mrs. Weaver and leching on her.
He is, yeah. And Margot called him Jeremy again.
Yeah,
she sort of Sunday named him again. Obviously, when she caught him looking at Mrs. Weaver's boobs.
But while Margot's holding court with Mrs. Weaver, the Goods kind of ruin this facade of the neighbourhood being, a very middle class by turning up on the back of a van they've hitched home on.
Yeah. There was an oi again. There was another oi.
That's what I was going to say, yeah. Another oi. I'm sure that's three episodes in a row that we've had oi-ois in.
Hello, Margot! Oi, oi!
See, we need to drop the tab and start an oi tab now, I think.
I think you're right.
Oi.
So then I think we see that Tom has made a unilateral decision, hasn't he, at this point? It's a bit like episode 1 where his enthusiasm totally overtakes him.
Jumping up and down and getting all excited and trying to whip Barbara up into a frenzy as well.
Yeah. He's so wrapped up in his excitement he totally railroads her, doesn't he?
Because Barbara's been sat trying to come up with ways of making their own property and plans a bit better based on what Mr. May said. And Tom sort of, like you say, just railroads through all this and rips up all the notes, which is a bit crappy.
That's the bit that's one of my sort of Tom hating moments when he just rips it up. I mean, I know he's got his own plan, but it's just so rude, isn't it? He's just like, well, this is useless. Rips up her work.
Yeah. Yep. Having been really offended by Mr. May sort of doing the same thing to his, metaphorically doing the same thing to him, saying, well, your ideas are a bit rubbish, so why not do it this way? And he's doing the same to Barbara. Poor Barbara.
And Barbara, she's not as enthusiastic this time round as she was in the very first episode of the show, is she?
No, she's not.
She's sort of, he's railroading, but he's like, he sits on her and he's slapping away at her arm and he's practically yelling at her in his fervour and she can't even think, the poor girl.
Yeah.
So I think what you see is basically Tom taking Barbara's lack of a counter-argument, because he is talking sense at least logistically, as he takes that as coalescence that it's happening and she's just shell-shocked.
Yes. Been taken unawares.
Good life, good life, good life, good life, good life, good life, good life.
Then we get to my favourite scene in this episode. Was this your favourite scene?
I did enjoy this one because I thought it was quite telling.
I just love the fact that Jerry sat there throwing shapes while he's listening to the New Seekers on his
New
headphones.
Seekers with his sort of like imaginary dancing partner with his massive cans on his head.
I just thought it was great. It's just some of the shapes he was throwing were brilliant. That scene's almost enough to get him the MVP for me. We'll find out in a bit. But Margot's trying to talk to him about missing Tom and Barbara when they go, and he's too busy enjoying the New Seekers.
He is. He's loving the New Seekers. But the thing that I found quite funny about this scene was that Margot's jealousy of Jerry and Barbara is hinted at quite heavily in this scene, because Margot's talking about missing Tom and Barbara, and every time she mentions Barbara, Jerry's sort of very insistent that he's going to miss Barbara, which did tickle me.
Yeah, he's quite skillfully adept at getting out of that situation and turning it into a compliment for Margot.
Yes, every time. There's always like a backhanded compliment for Margot, I think.
He's experienced. He knows how to manipulate the situation at this point, after God knows how many years of marriage to Margot, this high maintenance woman.
Yeah.
So Barbara arrives.
Yes.
Margot gives a hug and Jerry tries to cop a feel, but he's headed off at the pass by Margot. and poor Barbara goes to pieces, doesn't she?
Oh, she just crumbles. She really doesn't want to move and leave that house.
No. She's being stoic, isn't she? But the Ledbetters, they point out that she's got to tell Tom how she feels.
Yeah, she's concerned that while she's always trying to be logical, rational and reasoned, but she doesn't want to leave this house behind, but doesn't want to appear to Tom as though she can't cope and that she's just being silly.
And Margot says she's going to tell him, and Barbara goes angry Barbara on her, doesn't she?
She does, yeah. She goes up very quickly and tells them both to not do that. She doesn't want Tom to know at all.
That's another T-shirt we should get done. Up like a chippy.
Up like a chippy.
Barbara labels herself a silly, emotional woman and then sort of cries as she leaves. And Margot just takes that prompt to lambast Jerry for he's like the representative of mankind. She says, the male animal has a lot to answer for.
Well, thank you very much, Jerry.
So in the next scene, we see Tom doing a bit of painting in the kitchen, preparing the house ready for selling. And Jerry arrives with his briefcase, ready to head off to work. And he says that he's got a possible buyer for the house. So things just seem to be sort of set in motion already.
Jerry does so much for these two, doesn't he?
He wasn't even asked, and there he is, busying away in the background. He's a good friend.
Wonder what commission he's going to get.
Oh, God, yeah. What's he going to buy himself out of that?
Another boat, probably.
Think he'll buy a boat? Yeah, he'd buy. I think he was devastated about the boat going back, so I bet he buys himself a boat.
I'd have loved it if there was a recurring trope that Jerry gets a boat and it gets taken away every 4 episodes. That'd have been great.
Oh.
But yeah, and then, of course, Tom comes clean, doesn't he, about wanting to stay?
Yeah, so he's feeling exactly the same way as Barbara. He's wandering around his house, touching things and feeling all sentimental, but unaware that Barbara feels the same.
And Jerry nearly lets the cat out the bag that Barbara has been like that, but then, I mean, a lot of people would be very conflicted at that moment, wouldn't they? But Jerry's just like, oh, fuck this. Became a soldier.
Yeah, don't get involved, Jerry.
Yeah.
Don't do it. But then we see Barbara and Tom together in the kitchen, and Barbara just lets it all out. She tells him everything about how she's feeling about not wanting to leave their house. She wants to grow old there. And I get that. I think that's, I'm so glad that it got to the stage that she told him before anyone turns up viewing the house.
Yeah. And then clearly played for laughs. Obviously, you've got the situation where instead of fronting up, Tom acts like he'll make the sacrifice for her, the sort of silly, emotional woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't fall on his sword, does he? He just, he sort of wrings it out for as much as he can get and lets her think that he's doing it for her. Yeah. Okay, I'll stay.
Plays lots of little games, doesn't he? As if to try and curry, currency in their relationship. It's manipulative, really.
Yeah, a little bit. But then when she realises it, she calls him a tawd and chases him with a lot of eggs. Yeah,
because usually she just sort of lets him off with his little dishonesties. But she's not happy with this one, is she? And she chases him out into the avenue where poor Margot's conversing with Mrs. Weaver. And then, of course, Margot is going to be absolutely crestfallen and embarrassed again when Barbara throws something at Tom and it hits Mrs. Weaver. I don't know what she threw, do you?
It was an egg. She threw one of the eggs.
An egg, was it? Oh.
And it smashes on Mrs. Weaver's coat, I think. Which I thought was quite funny. Made me laugh.
What made me laugh was Tom's reaction. He just sort of turns around and legs it like a little boy, doesn't he?
They run off laughing. Like
a little boy who's been caught out, like, trespassing in a garden to get his football back or something. It's like, oh, shit. He's such a man-child. But sometimes it's endearing. Like, in that scene, it was endearing.
What did you think of this episode? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I really liked it because it, a lot of sitcoms from this day and age that we cover, and we'll cover other shows obviously in the future, the comedy takes precedence over the drama and the storytelling. With a lot of shows from this era. But, I mean, if you compare it to modern shows, there's a lot of dramedies, isn't there? There's a lot of shows that are billed as comedies, but the story... I've been watching one with Daisy Haggard in this week and Martin Freeman called Breeders. Have you seen that?
I've heard of it. I've not seen it.
And there's comedy in it and there's humour in it, but it's mainly sort of drama about where the story's going. Back in the 70s, It was all about the comedy. And then writers like these guys and also John Sullivan started writing shows that weren't just comedic. They had a lot of pathos to them. you know?
Yeah.
And this is a really well-written episode that shows the dynamics of both marriages, albeit there's only a brief scene in the Ledbetters that shines a light on Margot's jealousy. Yeah. But it's just so well-written, and it was very funny as well. So yes, I did like it. Did you?
Excellent. I did. I did like it. I liked it's sort of shining the light on the individual characters quite a lot, and we got to see, I think, them more in depth, and you can sort of see them as people rather than just like an ensemble of characters together. And I like the fact that it picked out different characteristics of each of the characters in this particular episode.
Fashion corner.
Let's go.
Fashion corner, fashion corner. Fashion corner, fashion corner.
Margot in this episode, as usual, has an array of things to mention in Fashion Corner. So initially, her first costume in one of the opening scenes was her giving good news outfit that she has on, which consisted of like a black dress and cloak with, I think, what you described as Grotbank's wig.
Yeah.
Which I think was like quite an elegant chrysanthemum. Pinned to the front of the dress, and she was wearing that to go and deliver the good news of the Weavers moving into the Avenue, and she looked, while looking quite stylish, she did look a little bit like she was going to a funeral, so I don't know how that sort of transcends into giving good news, but she in a very Margot way, she looked amazingly stylish. When Margot is out in the Avenue chatting with new neighbour Mrs. Weaver, they've both got like neckerchiefs on, which is the first we've seen of female characters with neckerchiefs. We've seen a lot of neckerchief action and cravat action from the male characters in The Good Life, but this was a new one.
This is a chickerchief.
A chickerchief. There we go. Yeah, I can imagine those two having like a neckerchief off. To see who could have the most splendid of neckerchief. I can see that those, Mrs. Weaver, I can imagine getting in on the action of who can have the best neckerchief on. Margot again appears in, I think we've had this before, the leopard print muumuu that she swans around the house drinking gin in the afternoon. And then the shirt and cravat combo, I think we've seen in quite a few episodes now from Jerry, but it's one of my faves. It really is. The print of it and the colours are stunning. They're like a petrol-y blue topaz. Ooh.
Does it make you go all
effort.
weak at the knees? Does it?
Yeah. It's a really cool. It's a fab shirt. It really is. I love it every time it pops up. It does make me happy. So I think that's it for Fashion Corner this week from me.
Okay. Have you got an MVP this week, Al? Or is it jury out?
No, the jury's not out. I have got a definite MVP for this week, and my MVP is Jerry this week.
Okay.
Jerry. I've chosen Jerry because he's always sort of beavering away in the background, isn't it, for the goods, doing things that they probably don't even notice in order to help them and further their cause. Whether it's getting a buyer to come and look at the house without being asked, or just being there in a kind of sleazy way sometimes, to comfort good old Barbara. But he's always on hand. He's a good egg. No pun intended with the egg all over Mrs. Weaver at the end. But he's there and he's a good friend. So definitely guy. This week he's my choice this week. What about you?
I think I'll join you in Jerry Corner. And for all the reasons you've outlined, but one other reason which I touched on earlier, which is just the mad shapes that he's throwing when he's listening to the New Seekers.
The dancing.
I just thought that was so funny.
The settee disco that he has on his own.
And Margot, of course, wants to know why he's not listening to classical German masters. And calls him a Philistine, but he doesn't give a shit. He's too busy boogieing down to the New Seekers.
Gin and the New Seekers.
Yep.
It's what makes a Wednesday night for good old Jerry, isn't it?
Well, that and a curry and a copy of Razzle. But yeah, effectively.
Yeah, he's got it all going on, hasn't he, Jerry?
We should have a soft porn tab. We got the tab, the soft porn tab, and the oi oi tab.
Has there been any more soft porn since the one? Did she find it? Have I made this up? Did she find some in the poof?
I think that might be a future episode. I think he's definitely had 2 pieces of soft porn.
Oh, okay.
And he also had a little look at the page 3 model.
He did in the paper when the son arrived. Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
he did. Yeah, he had a good gulp.
I like Jerry. So that's this episode. Do you know what's? I think next week's the last one of series 2, isn't it? What's it called?
It is. It's called Going to Pot.
Oh yeah,
where they all smoke loads of marijuana. I don't think they do. No.
I was actually trying to cast my mind back then and go. Oh.
No, they don't do that. Going to Pot. It's to do with pottery classes.
Oh yes, that does ring a bell. Yeah.
And a commission from Mrs. Weaver.
Yes, yeah, that does ring a bell. That's quite good, I think, that one.
So if you want to check us out on Twitter and Instagram, you can find us at SADDO Podcast. On Facebook, you can find us by searching for SADDO Podcast. We have a website, www.saddo.club, where you can get more information or listen to episodes. Get in touch and email us at saddopodcast@gmail.com. And please subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, I don't know. What's your podcast listening app that you use, Al?
I just use podcast on my Apple phone.
Oh, you got an Apple phone? Yeah, I use Podcast Addict, and I notice there's quite a lot of reviews for the shows I listen to on there. You can leave reviews on most of these apps or channels where you listen to podcasts, so it doesn't have to be iTunes, and it helps us out, helps us get found. So that would be most appreciated.
Yes, thanks.
Thanks for listening. Join us next week when we're going to have a look at Going to Pot.
I'll see thee.
Good morning.